Good afternoon, and welcome to the Seven Sands Protestant virtual service. I'm Chaplain Dale McKee. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about things we believe, and we've focused on what we believe about the Bible as a starting point. Well, I think the next logical step is for us to look and see who God is according to Scripture. And so over the next couple of weeks, we'll be examining what we believe as Christians about God. Now, it's a huge topic, and I thought the best place for us to start would be Jeremiah 29:23 through 24. See, in Jeremiah, he tells us that it's important for us to boast about understanding and knowing God. And so follow along with me as I read Jeremiah 9:23 through 24. It says, "Thus says the Lord, let not the wise man boast in his wisdom, or the strong man boast in his strength, or the rich man boast in his riches. But let him who boasts boast about this, that he understands and knows me, that I am the Lord, who exercises kindness, justice, and righteousness on earth. For in these I delight, declares the Lord." I looked up what it meant to boast, right? I figured that was probably, since it says boast a whole bunch of times in these passages, I figured it would probably be a good idea for me to look up this word boast. And so I found in my Bible dictionary that it said, boasting is to speak of deeds, abilities, or characteristics in a manner showing pride or self-satisfaction. In the Bible, the word also has a more positive connotation to glory in, right? For us to glory in something. In the Old Testament, though, where Jeremiah is, boasting is often used to describe the basic attitude of the ungodly, who depend on their own resources rather than on God. And so when Jeremiah is talking about boasting, and God is telling him, to write this, right? He's saying, when you boast, it is negative when he is speaking about boasting in our wisdom or our strength or in our riches. And so in verse 23 he says, "Let not the wise man boast of his wisdom." This is a negative thing, right? He's saying don't glory in your wisdom, right? But there's a question there, right? Is there something wrong with being wise, right? And the truth is there's not. There's nothing wrong with being wise. I mean, in Psalm 37:30, it says, "The mouths of the righteous utter wisdom, and their tongues speak what is just." In Proverbs 4:6 through 7, it says, "Do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. The beginning of wisdom is this." And this is great. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom, right? So in these passages, we see where wisdom is a good thing. Wisdom comes from the righteous person. Wisdom is something for us to obtain. It's something for us to chase after. But the important thing for us to know is that wisdom comes from the Lord. Where is your wisdom coming from? Is my wisdom coming from the things of this world? Is my wisdom coming from, the history books that I've read in school? Is my wisdom coming from, the decisions that I've made in life? Where is my wisdom coming from? And true wisdom comes from the Lord. Proverbs 1:7. It says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge." Proverbs 3:7 says, "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil." All throughout Romans, we see where Paul tells us, describes this wisdom, and it's Romans 2. He talks about, that the earth, the worldly people have given up the wisdom of God. We've given up these things to worship things that were made, not the person who made them, right? So there is this desire to have wisdom, and wisdom is good, but we tend to find wisdom in things that aren't wise, right? And in 1 Corinthians, where Paul is talking about this, about the crucifixion of Christ and our salvation, he points out that it is foolishness to the world, right? To those who are ungodly. And God delights in this foolishness because his wisdom is much more than his foolishness is much more than our wisdom. And so when we look at our wisdom, we've got to understand where our wisdom is coming from. And in Jeremiah, he's saying, look, don't boast in your own wisdom, right? Your earthly wisdom, your worldly wisdom, because it's nothing. It's not important. It's not the wisdom of God. True wisdom, which we should chase after, comes from the Lord, right? It's not the wisdom. It's not the wisdom that we find in our own eyes, right? As it says in Proverbs 3:7. You know. So when we look at wisdom, we shouldn't boast in our own wisdom. You know, Jeremiah goes on and he says, you know, boasting talks about boasting in our own strength. It says, or the strong man boast of his strength. You know, there's nothing wrong with being strong. You know, I'm deployed, and a lot of times there's not a whole lot to do, and so, you know, when we're not at work, we go to the gym. You know, the best thing to kill monotony or missing home is to stay active, and so we go to the gym a lot. You know, we work out, we go run, we do all of these things. We've had this competition in the office to see who can do the most pull-ups and push-ups and sit-ups, and you know, and so there's nothing wrong with getting strong, physically strong, but the truth is, there's nothing wrong with being weak. In 2 Corinthians 12:10, it says, I delight in my weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And what Paul is saying there is, look, there is nothing wrong with being weak, with understanding that we are going to fail, that we are not going to be able to take care of the things that we need to take care of because of our weakness. And it is because of our weakness that we find strength. You see, our strength, just like our wisdom, doesn't come from within us. Our strength comes from the Lord. In Isaiah 41:10, it says, fear not, for I am with you, but be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. You see, our strength comes from God. I love what the psalmist says in Psalm 73:26. It says, my flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. See, our strength it will fail. It is finite. It will end. Like, we do have a limit. I can only lift so much on the bench press, right? I can only handle so much in life before I break. But thank God that He is there, and He is more powerful, and He is stronger than I will ever be. And so when we rely on our own strength, when we boast in our own strength, like Jeremiah is saying here, then it's foolishness, right? That's not wise at all, right? True strength comes from God. Now, he then goes on and says, you know, talks about the rich man boasting of his riches. You know, I remember the story of the rich young ruler, right? He comes to Jesus and he says, hey, I've kept the law. I've done all of these things. What else am I lacking? What else do I need to get into heaven? And you know, Jesus doesn't say, hey, you're wrong for being rich, right? There's nothing wrong with being rich. In Psalm 37:11, it says, but the humble will inherit the land and will delight themselves in abundant prosperity, right? I mean, he talks, there is this conversation about having prosperity, being prosperous. Proverbs 13:4 says the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, right? The sluggard is the individual who is lazy and doesn't do anything. But the soul of the diligent is made fat, right? So it is when we work, we will prosper from the things that we do, right? There's no question about that. You know, in the early church, you had individuals who were rich, and they gave a lot to the church, to the individuals in need that were in the church, right? They took care of the poor. So there's nothing wrong with being rich, right? It's when we put our love in those riches. It's right when we focus on those riches. That's when we've got a problem, right? And so Jesus, when he's talking to the rich young ruler, he tells him, you know, go and sell all of your stuff. because Jesus understood that that individual's love was in his riches, it was in his possessions. But there's so much more, right? Like when we talk about prosperity, those verses that I just read about prosperity, there's so much more in life that we are prosperous in, right? It's not just our possessions. We can be prosperous in our pursuit of God. See, our riches come from the Lord, just like our strength, just like our wisdom, it comes from the Lord. In Luke 12:15, it says, "Then he said to them, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." Right? Our life is not our things, right? That is not what defines us. What defines us is our relationship to God. In Psalm 24:1, it says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." Right? It's not ours anyway, right? It's not ours. We can't take it with us. I love what Brian Jewell says. He's a financial advisor and author, and he says, "The money isn't mine in the sense that I own it. It is simply mine in the sense that I am responsible for managing it," right? God gave it to us. God blessed us. God has given us our prosperity, not us, right? He has given us the opportunities to have that prosperity, to have the skills to earn that prosperity, right? It's not ours. It belongs to Him. And so for us to boast in these things, for us to boast in our own wisdom, for us to boast in our own strength, for us to boast in our own possessions, in our wealth, it neglects God. It says that we have done it all on our own and we didn't need Him. But Jeremiah makes it very clear that it is God that we need. He says, "But let him who boasts boast about this, that he understands and knows me." We should boast in our understanding of who God is. In verse 24, it says, "I am the Lord," right? We should boast in the fact that we understand that God is the Lord. Isaiah 41:13 says, "I am the Lord your God, who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear, I will help you." Deuteronomy 5:6-7 says, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me." Right? We need to boast in this understanding of who God is, that He is the Lord God, that He is the creator of the heavens and the universe, right? That we understand His position compared to ours. And really that goes back to these things that we're boasting about, right? And that Jeremiah is warning us about, saying, don't boast in your strength, don't boast in your wisdom, don't boast in your riches, because ultimately, look, dude, you're down here and God's up here. Right? He is so much more than all of this other stuff. Don't put those things above Him. Right? And then he goes on and he says, boast in knowing God. Right? It isn't just, hey, I know who God is. I know that there is a God. There's plenty of people out there in this world who say, yeah, I know there's a God. I know that there is this creator, this being. I know that there is a God. But what Jeremiah is saying here is boast in knowing God personally. In 24, he goes on and says, who exercises, boast in the fact that you know and understand God, who exercises kindness, justice, and righteousness on earth. For in these things I delight. We know somebody personally when we begin to know the things that they delight in, when we begin to understand who they are, when we have a close relationship. Psalm 63, 1-4 is one of my favorite psalms. It says, "O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water. So I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and glory, because your steadfast love is better than life. My lips will praise you. So I will bless you as long as I live. In your name I will lift up my hands." Man, how much more powerful is that verse being where we are right now? Being deployed to a desert land, sand all over the stinking place. It gets into everything, it's on everything, right? And we can see, like, even though there's like some water nearby, it's not water we can drink, right? It's not water that is consumable, right? So we are in this dry and parched land right now, and my goodness, man, like, just the imagery there, like, I need you, I need God in my life, I need to chase after you and know you more, right? And because I know you more, I am able to lift up my hands and praise you, right? Romans 8:15 says, for we did not receive a spirit that makes you a slave again to fear, but you received the spirit of sonship, and by him we cry, Abba, Father. So the more we know God, the more the Spirit makes it real within us that we are able to cry out to him as children of God. For those of us who have accepted Christ and follow him, we are able to cry out to God just as Jesus did on the cross. Abba, Father, Daddy, right? We're able to have that close relationship with him. You know, Romans says, it goes on and says that we are heirs of God, heirs with Christ. My friends, the more we know God, the more we have this desire and thirst for him. The more we know God, the more we're able to call out, Abba, Father, right? You know, it's this personal relationship. And so that's why I think it's important for us to start here in Jeremiah 9, because it shows just the importance of having that personal relationship, of knowing and understanding who he is. It's the why we're going to spend time learning about God, learning who he is and what he does for us, and who, you know, what he's done in creation. You know, because knowing him and understanding him draws us closer to him. So this week, I want you to spend some time asking what it is you boast in. Is it your wisdom? Is it your strength? Is it your wealth? Is it your job or your accomplishments? What I've found is the things that I boast in the most are the things that I care about the most, whether it's my family or my work or my accomplishments. But where does this put God on your list? Where does your relationship with God, your understanding and knowledge of him, where does that fall on your list of things to boast about? So over the next few weeks, as we look at who and what we believe about God, I hope you will begin to see how important knowing and understanding him truly is in comparison to all the other things in life. I appreciate you joining me today, this week. I'm praying for you. We as a chaplain team are praying for you. We're here for you. I know that this COVID stuff and this isolation and the deployment and unknowns and extensions, I know they can be tough. I know they can be hard. Every single one of us is going through something tough right now. And so I encourage you to lean on each other. I encourage you to draw closer to God. And I encourage you to reach out for help if you need it. We're here for you. I pray for you. I pray that you will be a blessing and that you will be blessed. And I pray that you will be a blessing to others. All right. I pray that you'll have a blessed day, a great Aldafra day. Blessings to you.